Fourthly, as world energy demand grows strongly for decades to come, oil and other fossil fuels will continue to play the major role in the energy mix. Renewables will grow fast, but from a low base. The demand of an increasingly carbon-constrained world will require universal access to the latest technology and broad commercial-scale deployment of cleaner fossil fuel technologies. This is likely to increase investment costs. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, OPEC is totally committed to ensuring future oil market stability, and this involves timely and sufficient investments, the reduction of uncertainty, a sound human resource base, and more generally, an effective enabling environment. In a world of growing interdependence, this needs to be supported by a sound process of dialogue throughout the industry and in related areas, something that OPEC actively encourages. Thank you.
Dr. Qabazard has graciously agreed to answer some questions, and so we have a microphone set up over here for the sake of the live stream video that we're doing. If you could make your way to that video, if you do have a couple of questions, we would be willing to entertain those. And as people do that, perhaps I can pose the first one, and to ask about OPEC's role in international climate negotiations, and about the plans of member countries to seek compensation from the developed world for any reduction in oil use required by greenhouse gas mitigation.
We are very active in UNFCCC negotiations. We have, in addition to our member countries' negotiators at the OPEC Secretariat, we have a few experts that follow up the negotiations and conduct coordination meetings before the main UNFCCC meetings with the member countries' negotiators. These climate change negotiations or any agreement that will result from climate change negotiations will affect our member countries. Of course, as we mentioned, oil demand will increase. But with the climate change, if any agreement comes from climate change negotiations, this will curtail oil demand. Production from OPEC will eventually increase, but per capita income from OPEC, for OPEC member countries will be, as our modeling activities show, will be reduced drastically. And we are there in the negotiations to safeguard our interest in that there is no prejudicial treatment is directed against oil, and in any climate change agreement regime, we would like to guarantee that our member countries' income is not affected drastically. Because not all our member countries are rich. Our GDP per capita income in OPEC member countries ranges from less than $1,000 a year to more than $40 a year. But on the average, it's around $5,000 a year. Compared to OECD countries of $30,000 a year GDP, a lot of our member countries' population are close to the poverty line, and we would not like to see that these populations are penalized in any climate change negotiations. That's why we are participating in these negotiations.
Thank you for speaking to the topic of stability, and I'm wondering, in looking at the The Articles of the Association, there were several objectives, objective of oil supply, objective regarding oil prices, and I'd also say an objective of GDP in the OPEC countries. And I'm wondering if those objectives come into conflict, which is the higher objective, and kind of following on that, thinking about the objective of oil supply. You assured us supply is there in the midterm and the short term, but with these market changes, is the excess supply or the surplus supply really in place that we've recognized in the past?
It is in our interest to see steady prices for oil, and our ministers have time and time again expressed their view that reasonable price for oil is between $60 and $80 because of the $60 is enough for the marginal barrel to come into the market, and $80 is guarantee that people that invest in the oil industry, be it OPEC or non-OPEC countries, get a reasonable return on their investments. In the short to medium term, we have, as we speak, we have about 140 projects in OPEC member countries costing around $160 billion in new capacity to make up for decline rates and bring an increased capacity. And with that, we estimate that we will keep a spare capacity from between 6 to 7 million barrels going to 2015. Beyond that, and I heard today someone says that Saudi Arabia doubts if they are interested in keeping spare capacity beyond what they have, about 12.5 million barrels per day. I don't think this is true. We think that we are interested in keeping spare capacity, and we think it's important to keep spare capacity, but we would like to see more concrete signals from consumers about where the future demand is going. There are models, but opposite to the models, there are a lot of policies that are coming into play. Some are, we believe, are way over ambitious, and they might not materialize. So in case we don't want to spend any money, because our member countries, as I said, are in need of these funds, and they need them for their social, their economic progress, and we are trying to be careful not to waste these precious resources on capacity that may not be needed in 2018 or 2020. So this is why I mentioned security of demand. We need to see some security for demand before we invest $250 billion or $300 billion on capacity that may not be needed. So in short, in the medium term, there is going to be spare capacity for up to 7 million barrels per day to about 2015, 2016. But beyond that, there is some doubts as to how demand will play out.
First of all, I want to thank you for coming and speaking to us. Secondly, as a faculty member here at the University of Tulsa, I teach a course, and in that course I make my students read the book, The Prize. Have you had the opportunity to read that book?
Not really.
Okay.
But I know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, the reason I was asking, I wanted to find out, first of all, is and they learn very much about the history and of OPEC, the effect and the power of OPEC. What I wanted to offer you is whether or not, is that an accurate reflection as portrayed in the book. Secondly, my question is, we all know that oil is really kind of, the price of it seems to, instead of based on supply and demand, because you're saying that there's plenty of supply, but the price continues to go up, which is pretty much an emotional type thing. How does OPEC react when you say there's really no justification, but then also now you have people looking at different forms of alternative energy when really the price doesn't justify, maybe doing that. That could affect you in the long term, like as mentioned earlier in the conference today, when the U.S. completely, went away from using oil to generate electricity. So that's kind of what I was wondering, when you're also at the mercy of what NYMEX kind of determines what the price is, and it adversely affects you, even though we think it greatly, increases your revenues.
Thank you. I will read that book when I go back. Yeah, there is a large risk premium associated with the oil price today. There is some speculative premium, there is a risk premium, and that frustrates us because we know the market is well supplied. And if we increase production, all that will do is this production will come out of the ground and go to storage. And we believe that and we are pushing for more oversight of the financial markets. There are a lot of activities going on in that direction. In the International Energy Forum, we have workshops for decision makers to debate this issue and come up with suggestions on how we can rein in the effect of speculation on the oil price, but at the same time not damage the price finding mechanism that these markets, the function of these markets. So all I can say is, from our side, we will keep the market well supplied with oil to the best of our ability, and we would hope that in these exchanges where the price finding mechanisms are at play, we hope that these are regulated so that we end up with an efficient process of and the other thing is, of course, which we cannot control, is the upheavals and the political and the security problems that plague some parts of the world. And we just hope for the best.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Qabazard, for your insightful comments and for making the very long trip from Vienna, Austria, back to your the state that claims you here in the United States, in Oklahoma. On behalf of the University of Tulsa, we'd like to present you with a small token of our affection. It is a hand-carved antler inlaid with turquoise, made by R.T. Gibson, who is on the faculty in the physics department. So thank you for being here today. Please join me in thanking Dr. Qabazard for his comments, and that does adjourn our lunch.